we here? Okay, so make this available for those that missed the early part of it. How's everybody doing? Doing good? Hello, Kelly. Ehiva.
Doing good.
Doing good.
Everybody, well, appreciate the smiling faces of those of you who choose to show them. But what's the matter? Something wrong with your voice, Shay? Singing too much?
Us non-face showing people are
No.
good too.
Well, like they say, I got a face for radio, but I don't care. Her face made for radio. Okay, gang, so let's go ahead and get rolling here. I promised in my email to try to make this a relatively short night since, we've been kind of stretching things out in our past classes. So, welcome to week 5. Things have been going well so far. Most of you have been getting your assignments in well and in time, and hope you keep doing it because, as I keep mentioning, the best way to get a grade in this good grade in this class is to just do each assignment to the best of your ability, and you'll be fine. So for those of you that are the early admits, know that in college we tend not to chase after people the way that maybe they do in high school. We'll give you a few little nudges here and there if you miss assignments, but by and large you're gonna succeed or fail by your own efforts in these kind of classes. So, first order of business, I wanted to say kalamai for the amount of reading that I gave you folks this week. I promise it will be reduced, and you'll have no more than one paper per week at this from this point on, and most of them will not be as long or complex as some of the ones you've already encountered. I've really been enjoying your folks' reaction to the first couple readings that we had of. Not Hemeliam, Aloha, Nameleo Hawaiine, and Mrs. Pukui's article, which I think I pointed out is over 70 years old, but it's still really relevant to our way of thinking about Mele these days. Um, Lost my train of thought and I've lost my notes here. So what we're going to do today is our first want you folks to share some of your impressions of those. Actually, even before I get into that, I know what it was I wanted to share with you folks. So I just do a quick look ahead into next week and what you're expected to accomplish between now and then. Alo Lima 205. Ha'avina Pule e Ha. Okay, let me get the share on here. Sorry, I've got my own little camera here and it's sitting right where why am I not seeing? Here we go, share screen. Sitting right where all my buttons are. Okay, so our agenda for this week is to talk about the two papers that I did share with you folks and get some general mana'o from you all on, what you felt some of the significant points of the two articles were. And then we're going to also go in and I'm going to ask you to each talk about the two mele that I assigned to you and what relevance you found to these readings, particularly the second one on visualization and the senses, elements that you can find in there. What I'm going, actually, I'm going to remove this here. I put up a question too early here about performance in Kona because we're not actually in that part of our reading yet. I had a real interesting discussion with a friend in Denver who I did a presentation for at a post-conference event there, talking about Hawaiian music, and he was asking me about kauna and particularly in relation to the mele Kaulana Napua. Now, he had read an article that talked about how rife this melee was with this deep kauna that kind of masks the deeper meaning of the song. And I had to go back and review it. It's like there's almost every line of that song is very little literal expression. Even very little use of metaphor, much less kauna. So I was like, I really didn't even know what he was talking about. So that's going to be a topic that we'll get into next week, and that is going to be part of your readings for that. So anyway, so those are our two main things today, talking about those two papers and examining your melee for those for the visual elements and the other senses. For next week, what we're going to do is get into what I just alluded to. And now I see what I'm doing. Okay. Next week, we're going to get into those two topics, into the use of metaphor, into kauna. And what I want you folks to read up on a little bit, I am going to share with you my thesis chapter on metaphor and kauna. But also, I want you to go and look up the meanings. How many of you are familiar with any of these terms? Allusion, allegory, metaphor, simile, we've talked about, metonymy, personification. How many of you have actually heard and know what at least, say, two or three of those terms are? A few hands. Yeah, so what happens? Okay, Kilio got you too. Thumbs up from Kiaka. Yeah, so generally when we talk about Hawaiian mele, you're going to find people are going to throw out the term metaphor, but metaphor is a very specific type of expression, what's often called a figure of speech, and there's actually this kind of couched, or um, the use of these figures of speech goes beyond just metaphor, but it does include some of these other elements like similes, allegory, and illusion. Now, the difference is not real important, except where it comes in handy when you're a composer is understanding that you can use these things. So, if you were to say something, "Waliki no wao me koua kanilehua," I'm just like the kanilehua wind. That's not really a metaphor. So, which one of these would it be? And you're going to come across some of these other types of figures of speech and expression um, within the melee that you encountered. So it's really good to understand that there's a bunch of different ways that these figures of speech work. Not, and there are other elements that we're going to delve into. How many of you heard this famous word before, onomatopoeia? Onomatopoeia? It's not "I want a beer." Onomatopoeia? What is it, Rosa?
It's when the words that you use sound like the things that they're describing.
Exactly. So, can any of you think of terms like that in Hawaiian? Words that sound like the sound that they're describing or that they're naming?
I can think of one, but it's not actually that sounds like it. But
What's that?
the word for sticky and hot, like icky, is it?
Iki iki. Yeah.
Icky.
Iki iki. Yeah, that's one. What? Anyone know what sound a rooster makes? What they call it? What's the Hawaiian term for it? Huh? It's o o or o o o. The sound that the elapayo makes is o iu iu. Wind can be ahe, really soft, or ue ue is kind of the whispering of, the sound of running water. So Hawaiian has plenty of those that we'll get into. But again, that's not really, the personification or metaphor or illusion or any of those, but it's another type of thing that you should be aware of. I would order like ha'i or haki. It kind of doesn't sound exactly like that, but the sound of something snapping, there's a bit of a similarity in that hardness in the middle. Ha-i, ha-ki. We could argue whether or not that's onomatopoeia or not. Anyway, so please, I am going to link, which I haven't yet, By tomorrow, the chapter on metaphor and kauna, it's only about 25 pages and it's double spaced, so it's not super deep or super difficult to get into, but we do want to get in there. So before we go into today's topic of those two readings, I just realized this evening that I failed to post the discussion group. Here, let me put it in student mode so it'll show what you guys are seeing. Um, I forgot to post a topic in our forum area that correlates to what your assignment was for tomorrow. So I'm going to push it back till Friday. I hope that most of you either have it written already or have put some significant thoughts into that. But if you remember, this was your assignment, is to choose one of those two readings and do a 200 word or so reflection there. Basically, whatever your takeaway is, what you think the most important element or elements were of this of these two articles, so that you can perhaps apply some of the ideas in it into the research you're going to do onto your own papers or into your own melee. So, anybody have any questions on that? We good? All right, so let me go call these up. First one I want to call up is the Ahapua paper. So if you guys have that, if you took any notes or have questions about it, and let me go ahead and, okay, I'm not going to save that because it's just, but Hiahapua Akimele. Any, just off the top of your head reactions, anybody? What? Did any of you read it and go, what the heck is he talking about? No? What?
I thought it was cool how um all the elements within the ahupua follows the melee or all the parts of a melee. And then the part of even how the water flows beneath where you cannot see
Uh-huh.
kind of spoke about a kauna or something hidden kind of meaning. Yeah, so I thought that was cool, the comparison.
Cool. Mahalo. So, and I'm trying to find the online version of this. Let me go find it. Actually had, I don't know if any of you went to, so this is the actual published article here. Um, so I did this graphic. Let's see if I can blow it up a little here. So the inspiration of this, I was getting way toward the end of my dissertation writing, and as the article talked about, I was thinking about, what elements of Hawaiian culture, what kind of conceptualization is there in this world that I could relate to mele or hakumele. And that's when I read, I went back to my interviews from my research, my discussion with Keali'i Raichel and the mele Kavayakane. And I just had this vision of this kind of thing. Now, when you're in the social sciences, which I am, with ethnomusicology, we borrow a lot of our ideas from anthropology. How many of you had anthro yet? Anybody, have you, any of you taken anthropology? It's fascinating. I mean, it's basically the study of culture. So with ethnomusicologists, we study music culture. But one of the things we focus on is, not so much focusing on things. Like, when we're examining mele, we talk about the product of the mele, the text that the person write, and we analyze the words and the music or whatnot. But to what in our field, what's more important is what are the processes that result in the product we're talking about. So I started thinking about the mele in terms of how did I acquire what I know about Mele? It's because I was exposed to the work of previous generations of composers, and and you know, conversations that I've had with people who composed them themselves. And then, you know, when we talk about, you know, in here, so there's a well, you guys read this, you know, so there's anthropologists, music people that talked about this, what they call it, tripartite model of social express or a personal sorry, it was individual experience and expression, social maintenance, and what was the other one? Historic construction, and saw how all of that played a role in the mele. You know, everything that I know about mele comes from mele that were written by other people that I've been exposed to, and then I create mele that go through this process of people recording them and, you know, judging in nahoku and, you know, getting played on radio or whatever. And eventually my work becomes a part of that body of work and knowledge that in some 20 years somebody else may look at, and, you know, it may influence they do. So that's how the process is of this work. And yeah, I delved in quite a bit of, you know, the details of different ways that you could look at the social maintenance or the historic construction bits of it. But to me, it was really exploratory. I was at the very end of writing up my dissertation or my thesis for my PhD, and I just had that epiphany that I described of flashing back to Keali'i's article and then seeing, you know, kind of visualizing in my mind this ahapua'a that was made up of songs and the processes in which, sorry, I'm going full bore Portuguese tonight with the hand motions. But by the way, I have no Portuguese ancestry, but I went to St. Anthony, which is almost the same thing. Anyway, um, yeah, so and I wrote this chapter and I sent it to my supervisors in Aotearoa, and they came back and they're like, "Bro, this is amazing, but don't put it in your dissertation. It is so different. You need to, you know, put it aside for now and publish it separately." So it took me about 3 years to clean it up and get it to the point where I thought it was worth showing to somebody and possibly getting it published, which, you know, I eventually did. But yeah, it's funny. I mean, the response I tend to get from this is, you know, and I sent it to a number of ethnomusicology colleagues on the mainland, and as well as in Aotearoa, other areas of the Pacific, some of my Native American colleagues in the field. And without an exception, all of the indigenous of whatever form colleagues I had were like, "This is amazing. You got to get this published. Go for it, blah." And mostly the non-indigenous ones were, "We don't get it. We don't understand what you're talking about," which kind of told me, okay, I'm on the right path here. Maybe I could have done a better job of actually, I went all the way to Sweden for a conference and presented it there. And, you know, at the end of it, you know, somebody was like, "I don't understand, what's this ahapua'a thing?" I'm like, "Okay, well, in order to explain it, I have to go through the whole presentation again, so why don't you come talk to me afterwards?" But anyway, so I appreciate the mana'o. Who was it? Shay. Sorry, Shay.
Yeah.
Like, your face is no longer on my screen, so I'm going, who the heck was that again? Um, there you are now. Anybody else? I mean, what was a takeaway from it? You know, what's the big point of all this? Can anybody kind of whittle it down to, you know, the core idea?
Pretty much like a circle of life of how Kane's waters, like I said, goes through Ahupua'a's, goes up into the clouds. I mean, just like a just continuation of how Kane continues the Honua and his, I mean, and this is what I kind of perceive it with just how Kane just really interacts with Papa for say in a sense, and gets, I mean, it's hard to really explain. It's all in my head kind of, but yeah, the Portuguese side is coming out where the English kind of come out.
Well, and that's exactly what I felt was like, you know, and that's the challenge of it, is to kind of, you know, explain something to somebody who really doesn't have a clue of what the subject is. So, you know, to talk about the Ahapua'a, which I did in the paper. I, try to do the best job I can for them to understand, this is a self-contained ecological, uh, and model of sustainability that, you know, that was inherent. So really the big idea in all this, guys, is trying to find something, some element, some idea, within the culture, some kind of Hawaiian conceptualization that you can then take away from what it normally is about, say as a framework, and then be able to apply it to something else.
So cool. I guess I mean, could it be like Ue Kalani Ola Kahunua, kind of a vibe, but I mean, in the sense of that kind of perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like I said, when I came up with this idea, it occurred to me that, what the Ahapua, in the Mele Kauai Kane, it was describing the hydrological cycle, and it began with the water falling, in the uplands and traveling through, down the mountains and into the valleys to the streams out to the ocean. The next verse talks about it, the evaporation of the water over the sea, formation of clouds, which then return to the land. So, and I didn't realize until after I had written the paper and talked to a friend in Honolulu who's, he works for the Nature Conservancy. And he's like, oh, yeah, I talked about that at a conference, 4 or 5 years before. So it wasn't an original idea, but, it got me there that, okay, we're on the same track. This scientific idea, or, of what the hydrologic cycle is and what its function is, existed in Hawaii, at least to the time that mele was composed, if not much before. So there was an understanding of that natural process. But then again, how do you take that idea? And you could take anything. If you wanted to talk about, a particular olelo no eau, or he lani koluna he hunua kolalo kind of idea. Um, how can any of those things be applied to another idea so that you can kind of explore it and develop it a little bit more? So for me, I mean, I sometimes return to this thinking, if I'm composing a mele, I will um, go back to this and I'll go through that process and think about, how did this idea originate? So my friend Kenneth, emailed me on Friday afternoon about 3 o'clock saying, Brett, I'm doing a meeting with my classmates to talk about our next reunion tomorrow morning. Can you write a mele for me? I'm like, 10 hours? Sure. But it came down to, okay, get some background information, some ideas, and some other elements. And my mind would kind of run through this process, the historic construction. Okay, what other mele that I can think of that were written for particular occasions, maybe not a class reunion, but what, those that are more event oriented, that described things that were going to happen, or things that would be happening, that, weddings or whatever. um, and kind of running through various ideas in my mind, and that really helped in developing the ideas, because honestly he didn't give me anything to work with other than their theme was imua. Yeah, great idea. But actually, yeah, so I ended up writing 3 verses and a chorus just based on my idea of, okay, honestly, let me unshare this so I can see your guys' faces a little better. As I mentioned, I went to St. Anthony High School here, and honestly, my high school career was far less than memorable, enjoyable. Um, I went to one reunion, my 10th, and it was such a disaster. I've not been to any other since then. So I used my imagination and said, well, what would my ideal reunion be? How would things proceed from the time that we gather to when we sit down to eat, to when we're dancing or having fun or getting drunk or whatever until it's all pow and we say ahui ho, and let that kind of drive the storyline for me. So I'll share it with you guys at some point. It's not finalized, but apparently his classmates loved it, so it still needs some more developing. But yeah, having ideas like this particular framework, and some of the other things we're going to cover this semester, like those various figures of speech, as you know, many of my colleagues, Puke and Ogomeyer in particular, always emphasized, how big is your toolbox? What are the tools that you have to bring to the challenge of building your melee? And the more tools you have and the more skilled you are with them, that is going to expand the possibility of coming up with something really nice. So having this in your back pocket, the idea of the ahapua'a, and being able to visualize, which is really the big thing I want us to talk about today, is really, really important. So any actually, sorry, I closed my chat window and I see something in there. Oh, Kiak is still having problems.
Kumu, can I add something?
Please go ahead.
So in the English world, we like to like separate cultural, social, political,
Mm-hmm.
economical, and when as I was reading this first paper,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, what came to mind, because um what came to mind was when I went up to the Mauna
Mm-hmm.
3 years ago, Antipua,
Yeah.
all the songs that she did for like the other deities, yeah, like Poliahu,
Mm-hmm.
there it was amazing to see her describe like snow and all the winds and all that, like, because there's a whole different element up there, yeah, a whole
Yeah.
different environment up there, and all the families still linked, they still honor those songs from maybe 500 years ago.
Right.
And so yeah, that was my first time I ever realized, like, we say, okay, Hawaiians are scientists, but like for real, the moon, like, moon phases, stars, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And the connection and overlap, it's just too bad that the world that we live in today separate all these ideas. And this is why we're in the place where we're at with this whole disastrous pandemic, and all. It's because we've separated, and our ancestors didn't do it that way.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point that we will get into, and it may be the focus of a particular class discussion. So one of the things that I really like about, this model that I borrowed from, and by the way, in academia, this isn't considered plagiarism. This is when you can take somebody's idea and apply it to something and expand it in a way it's something that people really like. But what I like about, sorry, kind of hard to do, the triangle, is that every point connects to every other point. There is that pili to it all that, you don't get if you do a box. You do a square, you've got two corners that, don't touch each other in any way. So the flow of of Ike, goes both ways. With the Hapua'a, we tend to think of it going one way. It starts at the mountain and flows down to the sea, and then it goes up, through evaporation, recondenses in the clouds. But, in the way of thinking of this, when we talk about the role of society in this and the historic elements, they affect each other. When we talk about the individual and society, they influence each other. So it runs both clockwise and counterclockwise with everything touching. And this is something really, to me, that is the foundation of the way I think about melee, and, the way that I think of, good melee. It goes back to Larry Kimura. And what he said, he related a story to our class of when he was in, I think he was just out of high school or maybe in high school, and he tried to write his first mele. And he did it, and he gave it to his grandfather or grandmother, and they're like, oh, hey, Pili. And he's like, what does that mean? And they're like, oh, he pili. And it took him a while to realize that it was missing this connectedness of the thought in the mele, that he had a bunch of pretty lines in the song, but they didn't connect one to the next in any meaningful way. So he went back, redid it, over a period of time. I forget how long. Took it back to them, and they're like, pili keia. That he had tied the thoughts and the ideas and the words together in a way that pleased them. So that's a big thing to me of finding different ways to make those connections to the thoughts through the devices that we just talked about and many other things. Yeah, so that idea, the holistic thing, Kelly, the way of looking at the world is not just, some people see Mauna Kea and all they go is it's a great place to look at the stars and they don't think about anything else or, really seriously consider any other element. It's like that's its worth to them, and it's obviously that's not,
Do you
not
find
all
that,
of its worth
Kumu,
to.
do you find in other readings, because I know I have in some of the Hawaiian books that I've read, that the Hawaiian way of life, religion, if you may,
Hmm.
is very similar to other religions like Buddhism, Hinduism. It's that whole connectivity to even energy.
Yeah.
Therefore, the whole idea of what you say, it's turned backs on you. And that's, I mean, I've read Molokai books about that. Um,
Yeah.
and I don't know if that's what you find also, but even within this whole metaphor thing, there's a whole aquifer system underneath, like so.
Yeah. Well, the idea, let me think of the a better example. So, and I did talk about it in here. Sorry, and I just lost my train of thought. Um, the idea that when we say something like, if you're doing oratory, Maikala hiki kumukahi ai kavelona I lehua, from the time that the sun rises in Kumukahi until it sets in Lehua. Those are kind of the boundaries of, the Hawaiian world. The eastern and west, south and easternmost points and the westernmost point of the island chain. So you've kind of set the temporal, the physical boundaries, and then you also have showed a completeness in time from the sunrise to the sunset. So it's not about these extremes of this and this, but it's trying to capture the entirety of the day and of the place. So even in Mele, when you see, Maikauka Kekai, from, the mountains to the sea, they're trying to encapsulate or encompass the totality of that, not saying we here's the mountain and here's the sea and let's ignore what's in between. Everything from that aspect. So we're going to get into that. They're referred to, also what we call ekoa, or opposites. That's only one example. Anu and vela, for example. Hulu and molo'o. Ele ele ke'o ke'o. The opposites. The point isn't that these are two extremes that are absolutely exactly the same, but that we have a spectrum of colors all between the two that need to be taken in consideration. Yeah, so that idea of a holism, of all Papa and Wakea, of sky and land. It's the totality of all that matters, not the fact that we might look at them as being opposites. So yeah, that's part of all this, and it's really a way of thinking about the world. And that's one of the things that I've been saying. I realized earlier, this is my 30th year since I've began study of Olelo Hawaii, here at the, on the campus that I'm sitting at right now with Kumuhokalani Holt. But it occurred to me, 7, 8 years into it, that I started seeing the world in a whole different way because of the Olelo. Seeing what, things that I never saw before that I started to see, and changing of values and all that. That's the power that a language has to reprogram your mind. And when you start to get into it at that level, and more, it happened more and more as as I deepened my study of the language and was working in basically a Hawaiian language environment at UH for 18 years. And it's happening again now with my study of Te Reo Maori. It's starting to rewire part of my brain again that I'm enjoying, because it makes me see things in a different way. I'm seeing things that happen in Aotearoa now that are happening to friends and colleagues there that I wasn't even aware was really going on. But tuning into the language, and being able to listen to newscasts and podcasts and all that, and get a deeper understanding of the issues that they face. It's all because of learning Te Reo. Any last mana'o on this one before we jump into the biggie for tonight, the visualization chapter? Anybody else have anything to share? No. Okay, well, let's put this one down. I'm sure a couple of you at least are going to use that, or have used that as your writing exercise. And I will repeat this for those of you that came in. Tomorrow was going to be the deadline for your writing assignment, choosing one of these two papers and doing a short essay on it. I'm pushing it back until Friday because I just posted the exercise in our forums tonight. So if you're not fully sure about what you want to talk about, hopefully our discussion of this tonight will stimulate some ideas for you. Alrighty, so let me go find my other paper here. So actually this one, and I hope you all did read it, on visualization. Okay, so this was one of the more fascinating, to me, aspects um, of doing the research and my discussion with these folks. And know that I didn't go in with this, with these particular subjects asking, well, what do you think of visualization or the senses? They all came out. So the way that I approach this, for those of you that maybe go, either are in or going to be going into upper division courses, maybe graduate school someday, to give you a kind of an idea of how you do this kind of research. I found a really interesting paper, or was given to me when I was at Otago University, and it's a paper. I think it was Timothy Violetti from Tonga, and his paper was on Talanoa. Have any of you heard that term before? Nobody? It's real interesting. If any of you want it, I can share it. I can maybe put it up in there. But it with Talanoa, I mean, it's a lot like talking story. It's he says, it's talking about nothing, was one way he described it. But it's really, when you go into a conversation, from the academic approach, you're going into the conversation more as a peer, as a like with the person you're talking to. It's much less interviewer interviewee. And the reason I chose this approach is because I'm a hakumele, a composer myself, and I was conversing with other hakumele. So I wanted to be able to share my ideas and thoughts with these people as a sounding board, and have them give me feedback, as well as them sharing with me their original ideas. So basically what I did was, in advance, I asked them, give me 3 or 4 mele that you think really represent Hawaiian poetry at its highest level, or vocal performance at its highest level, whichever one. And I gave them about a month before, the interview, and we went in. The only question I asked them that I had set in my mind is, why did you choose these mele? what were the elements, the characteristics of the mele that made them think I need to talk to Keola about this one. And some of them did, mele that they had composed themselves. Some of them picked other famous mele. I didn't put any restrictions on what there's, what subjects they talked about. But then it proceeds. So, why this mele? They would pick one and go on with it for a bit, and I would ask some follow-up questions. Or what about this? Or, can you go into that a little bit more? Um, and generally, each mele we would talk for 20 minutes to a half an hour, and then we would move on to the next mele. So most of these went, the conversations went hour, 15 minutes, hour and a half probably, and usually by then we ran out of gas. So then what I did was extract from this the big themes of, what they thought were important, and the senses, particularly the visual aspect, was major. Kauna and metaphor was another. The grammar was another. So we're going to see and talk about all of them over the course of the semester. But so before I talk about this at all, I want to ask you guys. Now, the what I also did with each chapter is I picked a single mele to kind of be the focus of that particular discussion, and then um, added the other mele that it was discussed in another way about. So the mele for this particular chapter was Panio, written by Helen Deshay Beamer and performed by Uncle Mahi Beamer, who was one of my conversation topics, but also Aaron Salah. I think Helena Silva also chose it. Did you all get a chance to listen to it? What were your? How many of you had heard it before? Rosa?
I've
Just
never heard that version, but I mean, just with how, I mean, like just from hearing before reading the paper, I listened to the song, and then after hearing the song, you could really just hear the tempo change. I mean, you could just feel where the placement of the words was in your mouth, in a sense, is the way I kind of felt like, and you could just really feel it as the mele had gone on, that you knew exactly where the word was placed and how that feeling of expression was put out in it, from like your mid range to going higher or lower and all of that. I mean,
yeah,
it was just, I mean, it really was not in a sense of, first I was just like, okay, kind of, like old school kind of mele, but then after it kicked in, it was just really like almost like opera, kind of like an opera kind of vibe, but then just how everything was just so, like nahi nahi in a sense with it. I mean, it just, I could feel, I didn't know the words, but I could just feel like the words were like coming out of my mouth, of just when you could hear, like, I mean, just specificness and all that. So yeah, I mean, then compared to the reading, then I was like, oh wow, I mean, it really kind of correlated in unison with how, the mind worked with how the song kind of played out. So yeah, it was really nice. So mahalo.
yeah, beautiful, beautiful mele. I don't think it's underappreciated today because it hasn't been recorded by really popular musicians in a while. I think Raiatea did a recording of this. I'm not positive, but I think she did because she was kind of close with Uncle Mahi as well. Anybody else thoughts on the mele?
I know last week you told us that, and obviously it's his CD. So are you saying that he is the one singing the lead
Yeah,
in the YouTube link that you sent us?
yeah.
Cool. Sounds very Nina Kaliva Hamana-ish. So I was trying to like look like who else he gets singing with him. I don't know if she even in that same the kind as him, but that's the vibe that I was getting. Very, yeah, very old school, but very like piano-y, like
Yeah.
just
Well,
yeah.
to understand a couple of things. One, Uncle Mahi was Helen Deshay's Punahele grandchild. He lived under her piano and listened to her and her sisters singing this mele and her other compositions from when he was an infant. So, in talking to him and his niece Marmonette, who not was a Marmonette, Gay Beamer, they were living together in Kaneohe in his last years. That had an incredible influence on him, and why he he sang like a woman. His voice is probably the most feminine of
It sounds
any.
very woman.
It
Like,
does.
I'm not trying to make like my ears the kind, but if you never said that that was him, I probably would have said woman
Yeah,
with the one guy on the cover of the
right.
record.
And
So
that's yeah.
Hell, I'm not sure if it's available online. I know it's on iTunes. I don't know if it's YouTube. There's only one commercial recording of her, and I forget who she did it with. It was from the 1930s, doing the Hawaiian wedding song, and it's amazing how much he sounds like her. He played me one other recording off a cassette that the family has, but was never released, of a song that I don't think has ever been commercially recorded. But yeah, I mean, but it's because of that influence. He heard that day in and day out for a large part of his youth. So that influenced that, and that influences other elements, the performance, the puana, everything that he does. So when we look at the melee of Helen Deshay, Beamer, of Lena Machado, to me, that's like our Hawaiian classical music. You don't mess with it because that's how they felt about it. These were musically literate composers who annotated, the music that they wanted to hear. And the Beamers were always um, very protective over that legacy of hers. They were very upset when people would record those songs without coming to them first for asking permission, as well as for guidance. So when Raiateo wanted to do one of her mele, and I think it was Paniao, she went to Uncle Mahi, and he went into the studio with her. And I shared this with my students from the past 2 years. So the story was, she was in there and recording, and the one piece of advice he gave to her was to smile when she sang, and she did. And he says, your voice now has a smile to it as well that it didn't have before. The brightness and he said he could hear the smile in her voice that he didn't hear before. So I forget which one of you it was. I was trying to do the same thing with you. Smile when you're singing because you're pulling the edges of your mouth, and you're kind of exposing more teeth, and it really affects your sound.
I know she
Um,
did a good version of Kimo Henderson.
oh, maybe that was a Kimo Henderson hula. It could have been that one. Yeah. So the way Mahi described his grandma, it was out of her time. It was so different from other things being written. I'll tell you another funny story. Sorry to sidetrack, but with Kimo Hula, when I first got to Hilo in '95, well, I got there in '94. I think in '95 or '96, I was in one of Honani Bernardino's classes, and the Henderson House. It's in Pi'ihonua, which is near Ka'umana on Hawaii Island. It was up for sale. So she took us up there. She taught us Kimo Hula, and then we went up to the house there in the driveway, and we sang the song to the house. And I was trying to figure out a way to buy it and maybe try to restore it and whatever, but it was way out of my league. But yeah, so with those kind of melee with them, and I'll share you one other, and I think I did share this with my previous students. So one story that Uncle Mahi also related was, in I think it was in the 50s or 60s. He was on the Lucky Luck TV show, which was one of the more popular television shows, and he also talked about this on the PBS Hawaii Na Mele series. He was on the show, and he was doing Lena Machado's Holoa Apa. Kauai Kaholo. Anyway, he's singing it as he's dancing the hula. And because of that, he kind of simplified the melody and took a few liberties that he might not have otherwise done for the show. He gets home, and the minute he walks in the door, his telephone is ringing. He goes over and picks it up, and it's like, "Oh, Mahi dear, this is Auntie Lena. How are you? By the way, what you did to my song on the Lucky Luck show today, I would never do that to one of your songs or to one of your grandmother's songs. Why did you do that to mine? And as he's telling me this, he is in tears. I mean, his entire face was soaking and dripping off his chin. And it had happened 50 years before, but you could tell how deeply it affected him that he disrespected Lena in that way by not doing her song the way she really wanted to. So, again, this is, this is our classical music, not to be messed with if you ever record a Beamer song. But what's wonderful is, I mean, she also had a very different style when it comes to the lyrical content. The way that she approaches it, like with Punny O, she's basically describing this view in front of her. And I talked in there, there's a journal or somebody's diary describes her as she's lying on her belly in front of the ocean out in front of where they are and seeing everything that she sees and described in her song. So it really speaks strongly, her powers of observation and how important that was um, in her ability to craft this song. And I'm trying to go through. Okay, I don't have the lyrics right in front of me, but let me go ahead and call them up.
I mean, I guess for me too, Sarkung. I mean, with the
Yeah.
whole like, I mean, if you to just read the song, because I know, I mean, but I know like from how Olelo to like Namele, definitely, I mean, you cannot really, I mean, it's not the same flow, but I mean, if you were to just read it like in a sense poetically, I mean, but compared to the way that it was sung, I mean, it for me it doesn't have, I mean, the way that it was for me, I kind of, nothing like to disrespect or anything, but how it was composed, the melody doesn't necessarily, in a sense of, I don't know how to really explain it, but just by from reading it to hearing it, it has so much more, I guess, the mana, how the mana is transverse into like the poetic of, like la 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 la, but like so mellow, so calm. But then if you're to kind of read it, up front, and you kind of almost is like to Oli it, would be like, it'd be like so, like, I mean, the words in it just really, kind of brings out like ho ho, you know what I mean? But then the way it's sung is like la la la, but the same kind of vibe. So I mean, it's just really interesting of just, I mean, not necessarily, I guess I look at it kind of almost like a dualism in the sense of, Kahiko to Awana, in the sense of how, the modern days to Kahiko, in the sense of, I mean, it can still be sung out only in a sense. I mean, if that was to be, respectful, but like, how just the tone of, how you control everything could still be melodic in a sense, instead of, I mean, I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah.
No, it does. So I tried to show you guys this last week. This is a book that was put out many years ago. I forget how long it was. Doesn't say. By another one of Helen's grandchildren, 91. Um, Songs of Helen Deshay Beamer, Marmonette Beamer, another one of her grandchildren, wrote it. And this has all of the full music notation of her melee from Helen's own transcripts, the words, the backstories. I don't know if it is available for sale anymore. You might want to check the library if you want to dig more into her melee. But yeah, I'm lucky to have a copy of it myself. So if we go into the lyrics, and I'm showing it, Wanani Pani Au Ika Ike. So we'll get into this more. Sorry, I just dumped a bunch of books on the floor next to me, and I don't want to run over them. So very visual from the front. Now, to me, I've heard people use the word nani for um, for other things besides visual, like oh, Leo Nani Kona. To me, Nani really sits in the visual realm more, and there's other terms we would use for other elements of beauty. beautiful smell. Would I say hey ala nani? I don't think so. Ika uike. She's affirming that she's sitting right there and seeing these things that she's describing you right out front. Ahuvale kamoana pakipika kaulani kamalie. So she's describing the tranquility of there, but obviously it's something that she can see. That which cradles my Hawaii, my Onehano. One thing I'll point out about Helen's mele, for the most part, they don't use a lot of the assonance that we talked about, those linking devices like we see in Hi'ilave and Kamanu and other mele of that sort. Um, she is, eschews, if you're not familiar with that, she disregards or otherwise doesn't. And I've done that more and more in my recent things too. I don't really get hung up on the assonance except in for particular kind of mele. Kai holoholoani i kanalu ha'imai kahapapa. So she can actually see the fish running through the waters as the waves break. And I think I mentioned in this article, Larry Kimura actually visited this place and confirmed. He says if you're there, you see the waves breaking and you can actually see the fish running through the waves. Haimayana breaking along the reef. Again, very visual. Ai Muapono directly out in front of me. Awana Ikekai. So from that point, from that spot in Kona, you can actually, if you look off to the right, you can go up and you can see Haleakala sitting in the distance, around, if you look around the edge of the Kohala Mountains, on a good day, you can see Haleakala there. Also on that right side, Kohala Paholane, it's spread out before me from the mountain to the sea. Ainaho'ihi Akavahine. There's other senses in here. Okay, this is why we don't always trust Huapala. What's wrong with this line?
It's not ahi.
It's not ahi. What is it?
It's ahe.
Ahe. Typo city. So here the sense of touch is being enticed, that gentle, the breeze that caresses your body. You're seeing again the beauty of Mauna Loa, Mauna Kea, and Hualalai, all which are visible from the vantage point there at Paniao, and referring to them as the guardians. Kawai o Akawahine, there was a freshwater pond. I think it's still there. I don't know if the original house is still there, but members of the family, I believe, still live on the property. And then listing the kind of plants, Kikiave, Camilo, Kiko, Mekaho, Niu Ha'ai Kione. And I think, again, I mentioned in the article, Larry confirming these were dwarf coconut trees. So it wasn't the dancing coconut trees, but the shorter variety. Is that the Samoan variety that's a little shorter than the ones from here?
I think Portuguese. No.
Okay, let's not.
Yeah, it's shorter and it has bigger coconuts.
But is it the Samoan variety that's, or am I getting it backwards? Is it the Samoan variety that's the taller one?
Yeah.
Yeah, what?
Yeah, I heard it's someone.
Yeah, it's the Samoan one.
That ones are shorter. Okay. So the closing here. So if you look at this top to bottom, I mean, close your eyes, listen to it with an understanding of the words. Did any of you experience that visual? Could you kind of make a picture out in your mind of what she was describing? Because to me, that's, those are the best mele, the ones where you can kind of see what's going on, even if you've never been there. I've been to Kona side plenty times. I've been in that general area, but I've never been exactly where this is. So to be able to capture that sense of, of the place and being able to fill in the blanks. And that's okay. I think I mentioned it in there. Part of the visualization is sometimes you have to fill in the blanks with your own ideas. But it also goes to show too, um, you can't be total in your description of these things. You have to pick and choose, what the most important things that you want to relate are, to the listener. I don't see anything here, there's no description of her looking down toward the left, going towards Kailua Kona or anything. I'm not sure if there's anything notable and visible, going in that direction, but she's looking off to the right, toward Haleakala, toward the Kohala Mountains, to Hualalai, Mauna Loa, Mauna Kea. Let's see, what's the order she does those in? Um,
Mauna Loa, Mauna Kea, Hualalai.
yeah, so if you're in Kona, she would be looking, turning around toward the mountains, and Mauna Loa would be the furthest on your right, and then Mauna Kea would almost be more directly in front of her, and then looking off towards Hualalai, to her left. So yeah, you're getting a panoramic view from her via the melee. Do any of you see any other elements of the senses being displayed in here? We have, obviously a lot of visual. There was at
I mean,
least
I
one.
guess for me, of just seeing how much, I mean, and nature itself, how much mana and how much, like in a sense of power can really not necessarily destroy or whatnot, but then the gentleness of how she had put everything that she's seeing, I mean, in a sense, what she's seeing has so much more power to the gentleness that she's conveying from it, I guess, in a sense of the way I look at it.
No, absolutely. So really the only other thing there's two other senses being enticed here. One is the sense of sound with the nalu ha'iani kahapapa, the sound of the breaking of the waves out in front of her on the reef. And then again, the touch, nakeahelo makani I ho'opa mai, so she's feeling or describing that sensation of of the wind touching her skin. So this kind of thing, this is the kind of melee that is really, it's highly choreographable. I mean, there's almost too many ideas, to really represent everything in hula. Sometimes a sparsity of ideas works a little better. I mean, you want to have some content words for the person choreographing the hula to grasp onto, but when you have so many things going on. So in that particular verse, Nakia Helo Makani Ho'opa Mai, then going Ikiani Kanani Mauna Loa Mauna Kea Hualalai Nakia Io Kohome.
It's very blunt, but still vague in a sense.
Well, it's
not necessarily vague in a sense of like, but how you said there's so much more, like almost like connecting your deities, you know what I mean? There's like one cool, but then you know what I mean? I'm just connecting all of, I don't know, there's so much going on in my head, but I mean, I kind of.
well, before we move
Only
on,
good vibes.
yeah, before we move on, and some of these will be covered later, but we may not get back to this melee so I do want to point it out. So one thing that's important to me in this kind of melee and in most, the first verse really summarizes what the melee is about. Wunani pani o ika o ike, kawaiho ka hela hela I kalai. That's the big picture. She's talking about the beauty of this place. And then she goes on to describe specific elements, why she considers this to be the specifics of the moana and the one, and then her description of the fish swimming, kaipume hana hone kikino, the physical sensation of the warm water, her vision of Maui off in the distance, Kohala, the mountains, the Punawai O, the freshwater pond in front of it, and then Ea Kapuanai Lohi'ia no Ko'olani Ohako. I believe that was. I'm trying to remember if that's the name of the 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 lady of the house or if that's actually the name of the house. Give me a minute. It's been so long, I forget.
I mean, I guess the other nice thing to like about is the Ea Kapuana E Lohe Ia is, instead of going Haina Mai Kapuana,
Yeah.
I mean, it really, it brings out the full beauty of, what her mele is really, I guess, conveying.
Okay, so Paniao is actually the name of the home. So Ko'olani, where is it? Ko'olani o Hakau. I'm not sure. I mean, she wrote this for Mrs. Ruddle, Annabelle Ruddle, who was, her and her husband owned this. That could be her Hawaiian name. The book doesn't specify. Oh, not what? Big point here. Na Ko'olani Hakau. What did we talk about? The difference between no and na?
From and by.
So I'm curious. I have to think about this. I can't give you guys a definitive answer. I'm wondering if Helen is referring to herself as Ko'olani o Hakau. I'm gonna have to talk to one of the Beamers about that because normally when it's a mele no somebody. So I'm curious now. So here is the song for Ko'olani Hakau. I don't know why it would be na there. So
Would it
let
be
me get
because
back.
there's many?
Maybe it might be a typo. Or Kalamai.
Oh, no. I was just thinking because maybe there's many Ko'olani Hakaus that, many different
No.
Inoas that have it.
That's a swing. That's a swing and a miss, good buddy. No. Yeah. Let me double check the words here. No, it says na in the book, and I believe that's correct.
Sorry, Kuma, I just want to take a swing at it, but thankfully I missed.
I've had people in the past ask if it was na kahako for pluralizing, and no, it's either for or from or about. But yeah, let me look into it. Anyway, so you have that general structure. You have a very broad introduction. You have verses that contain some detail, drilling down a bit, and then you have kind of wrap it up at the end. So, anything else? Sorry,
I have
you
a
have something,
question.
Rosa?
Yeah, you mentioned that it might be, maybe there was too much in there for hula, which seemed to imply that she was writing this specifically so that it would be danced.
No.
No. Good, because
No. I mean, that's yeah, that's a great point because I've had people kind of challenge me on my own. Well, how's somebody supposed to dance to a hula? And I'm like, who said I wanted this to be a hula? It's not every mele is meant to be a mele hula. Somebody can always try. It's funny. I told you guys my Facebook hula story. No, my older students. Did I tell you that one? So yeah, it was
Yeah.
inspired by Kama Hopkins, and basically everything that pissed me off about Facebook, ended up in this song. And this was 10, 12 years ago. Um, somebody asked, somebody seriously asked, "Can I record this and do a hula for it?" And I'm like, have at it. I had no idea how you're going to do it, but no. So I mean, this was a gift, and this is how Helen wrote many of her mele. It was gifts for Kimo Henderson and his wife at their home in Pi'iholo, or Pi'ihonua, not Pi'iholo, Pi'ihonua. So yeah, there was never that intent there. People do interpret them through hula now. The other poetic device I want to point out here, and then we'll take a quick break and come back and you guys talk to me about your mele, is the use of lists is very prominent. Um, and this is something more common in older, longer mele. There used to be a ho'okuku. You folks may have heard of it. Trying to remember. Um, Paka'a, the story of Paka'a and Kua Paka'a. Are any of you familiar with that? So there's this competition where you're trying, each person is trying to create the most complete list that has a particular reference, like a fish, all the fish of the ocean or all the flowers of the uplands or whatever. So because of that, they tend to not be very common in Mele, but she did it a couple times here. One was her listing of the three Mele, and again the idea here is completeness. Listing all of the mauna that are within her view from the vantage point at Pani'o. Uh, Kikiave, Camilo, Kiko, Okaho. So she squeezed in four different plant types that she observed. So we know, at least at that time, well, I can guarantee you there's still Kiavi in that area. I have driven through it a number of times. But Milo, Ko, Kaho, those are all kind of plants that you're going to find, in that area. Oh, and Kaniuho. So a total of five. So that's called, Larry refers to it as a helu, when you helu, a list of particular things. So yeah, I mean, it's really skillful. It's using other poetic devices, not in lieu of, but at least there's something in there that we recognize out of the poetic tradition, even though she really didn't use any of the linked assonants or anything like that. Maikokai Kikai, I think she used at some point. So that's the use of opposites that we talked about, the ekoa. Yeah, Mayuka
What
Kekai. So there's a bunch of different ways you can say Mayuka Kekai, Maikauka Ai Kekai, Ahiki Kekai. That particular one you can express in a number of different ways to fill out, whatever your melody is. Sorry, Russell, you had a question or comment?
yeah, me question. Not being familiar with all these places, and why is she referring to Kohala as the enchanted land of the lady? Who's the lady? Is it from some legend, or is she talking about the homeowner? No, surely not.
I don't know, honestly. I mean, usually when you hear Kawahine in a mele on Hawaii Island, you're talking about Pele. But Kohala is not Pele's territory, it's Kamapua'a. So there's a certain point, I think, above North Hilo, as you're going from Hilo to Hamakua, there's an area that's considered the dividing line between Pele's land and Kamapua'a. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know of any particular story. Do any of you?
Well, interesting that the paragraph right before the Puana talking about the Vahine again, Kavai au au o Kavahine. So I mean, yeah, I don't know. I said I was thinking Big Island songs, Vahine usually automatically kind of think Pele, but
Well, I
no,
think
I
the
don't
one
know.
with the I mean, this is a man-made pool. So I think in that case, it's literally referring to Mrs. Ruddle. It's possible in that line that she's also referring to Mrs. Ruddle, the owner Annabelle. So Aina Ho'ohihi Akavahine, maybe that's the land that she's from. I seen the picture and it appears, she's a Hawaiian woman. So perhaps that's her, where her family roots are. And then O'oe Noe Ko'oi. you know, again, it could be a reference to somebody else and saying that they are the best, but you know, she gave it to Mrs. Ruddle and literally told her, this song is for you." I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, it is her in both cases, but nothing definitive. The book really doesn't have a whole lot. You know, it's not like the Lina Machado book where you've got a couple pages of narration of what the mele are about. So let's wrap this one up, guys. If you want, we can come back to it. I mean, to me, this again, this is classic. You know, modern to me, and I still think of this as modern mele. The music of it. So let's take just a 5 minute break. If any of you like me need to use the restroom, and then we'll be right back, and you guys will start talking to me about your mele. Are we back, gang? Let me see some faces. Still seems like we have a few missing. So, Kiaka, are you there?
I
So, yeah, I, wanted want to at various points during the semester to have you talk a little bit about your melee too. So why don't we? I'm gonna call it up here. I have it available in the kind songbook. So let me throw it. So for those of you not from last semester, one of the projects we had with our students was for them to, most of them chose to do it was to compose their own melee. So this was Kiaka's. So you had said you wanted to, you noticed a lot of what we were talking about in your melee. So you want to point them out for us?
yeah, I just was telling Kumu how a lot of it reminded me of my own song that we worked on last semester. Um, especially the more descriptive parts of it. And how I noticed like how in the beginning, the other song was what is it, O Nani or something about Nani and Ike and stuff, and
Right.
in the opening, and that's how we started the opening of my song also.
Yep.
And then just going on to the descriptive part of what you see, their senses, like you talked about,
Mm-hmm.
what you see, um, and then in relation to talking about like the east and west in a sense in the second verse, hikimai no kalai hanaki, um, and then I don't know, just describing so much stuff like the vai and
Yeah.
Descriptive words of in the hui. I
Yeah.
don't know. I just couldn't help but notice all the similar things that was done in
Yeah.
the other song also. Just like we did in mine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was
Yeah.
part of the process of trying to guide you along was to bring in those aspects. So yeah, the first line is very much like Helen's and Paniao, Nani Paniao, Ika o Ike, Nani Vale Omo Omomi, Ke Ike Ako. You're affirming that you're seeing these things and describing them. Napali me na kai kuona, remember us looking through the newspapers and coming up with that. So that is how this sailor on this boat that sailed past the north shore of Molokai described that area and why um, Kiaka used Kaiku Ono instead of simply Kahakai or One was because that's how in this newspaper story it was described. Hikimai Kala'i Anakahi, the sight of the sun rising. Kauai Mapuna Kahimau, that's really not visual, but it's there. Hevehi Ono. So here's the hui. He momi hulali mai ike kukuna o kala. It's a pearl glistening in the rays of the sun. But you're talking about the beaches, but still, very very visual, and that's a figure of speech there, and you can figure out which one it is. Instead of it saying heone hulali mai himomi, it's something really precious to you. Um, Ahumaila, it's exposed, it's plain for everybody to see. The Pueone, Naale Kuakea o Kavili, or Kaivi. Kavili is one of the currents on the going down the south side of Big Island to Ka'u. But yeah, I mean, totally visual. I mean, this is something that somebody could easily choreograph. I don't think there's too much in there that it would be too much of a challenge. But because it's this is not a hula kui style. There is a hui in this. The need for that haina ia mai verse no longer exists. Those type of haina or ea kapuana type of verses, you generally only find them in older hula kui style. The pure verse style. It's not uncommon for modern mele to use it, but you don't find them in older ones. So something like Hapa's Leipi Kake that was written by Kiope Raymond, it has Puana Ia as one of the last, and then Puana Ho Ia Mai. It's not necessary because the hui serves the same purpose. It summarizes and reinforces the overall feeling of the mele. So yeah, I mean that's a great example, and I'm glad you caught that. But the visualization aspect of it, yeah, importante. Okay, so I want to start with some of you who have been a little quiet tonight, to have you start with the discussion of your mele, and I'd like to start with Pomaikai. You got kind of a shadow on your. I can see. Are you sitting there in the dark? Are you in the dark, or do you have a filter on?
Oh, is it actually really dark?
Oh, there you are. Okay. So let me see. At this point, I'm just going to ask you folks to do one of your two mele. So yours were Kaulana Molokai, the Kamara collection one, and Pua Kukui o Molokai. So let me go find that on my screen here. Which one do you want to do, Summer? Or Pomekai?
Pua kukuya molokai.
Pua Kukui? Okay, let me go find that and I'll share the screen with you guys. Okay. Here we go. So walk us through it. What are the sensory? Let's start with the visual, but if you see anything else in there, smell, taste, touch, whatever, point them out.
Okay, so I've actually looked all over for like on the internet and stuff for like if they could um if anybody composed like sang it or like they would give me a better description of what David thought of this, but it was just from what I could tell, it was just like um it went from the island flowers, like the yeah, like there's like like the state flowers and stuff.
Right.
If that makes sense. Yeah, yeah. And he yeah, it just went to island like and um their flowers and then it would always go back to the Molokai, like uh the kukui blossom because um as it says here, the one and only flower that I behold is the kukui blossom of Molokai. So
Right.
like I think he was trying to say like this is what um how do I explain it? I wrote it down but I can't find the document that I put it on. So I'm just going off of what I remember, but I think he's like saying like from all the yeah the choices of the flowers,
Mm-hmm.
mine is the kukui blossom
Right.
of of yeah of Molokai.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So there really isn't a whole lot, yeah, honestly. If you're familiar with these pua, obviously, you see them invoke the lehua, kamokihana, rosalani, ilima. You know what they look like, and that can trigger something with you. And he does reaffirm in there okaheki na pua I ka'u ike he pua kukui o molokai. So he's setting up this comparison basically, yeah, to say, yeah, Maui Rosalani ya, Le Ilima ya, but Kapua Kukui no Ko'oi. So yeah, not a whole lot there. There's nothing um, nothing really intense, unless you've smelled them, nothing really triggering a sense of smell. Since that one's kind of short, let's go ahead up and take a quick look at your other melee. Um, Kaulana Molokai, is this the one? Yeah. Kaulana Molokai e Konila e Kuila e Kanila Kanila Konila Konila e Kaohi ke Nani. Okay, what do you see in here?
Okay, so I actually did the same thing, like you said, to research if there was anybody that sang it, but there was nothing that I could find.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
fine, but just looking at it, visual elements, other sensory elements.
um this one kind of gave me a hard time
Hmm.
because like I don't like how I play around with the words, and like I just want it to match what it actually means, because
Right.
this one, there's no English translation.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Well, in that case, what you do is, if you don't know the words, you got to go dictionary and look them up. So there's a few little, elements in here. Um, um, Hinani haupu makaono, makaono akala, hopono me kalima, peku vai. Yeah, this is kind of, it's not really deep in the content area. Um, like hui koni koni e. It's just kind of a repetition of that particular thought. Yeah, so this is one, actually neither of yours, is particularly rife, to use that word I used earlier. It doesn't have a whole lot of visual elements to go along with it. Anybody
yeah,
else see anything that I'm not, or
it's just a repeated, like there's in each line it's the same
yeah.
word, like the
So
last one.
we'll move on. There's other things in here, later on in the semester we'll get to. So yeah, guys, if your particular melee don't have any strong elements that we're talking about any particular week, don't worry about it, because we will get to we'll find something in everybody's melee at some point or
What's the name of this song? Sorry, Kumo.
Kaulana Molokai. So I think that, yeah, there's two different Kaulana Molokais. This one was in the Marcia Kamara collection, and then there's the other one that we're all more familiar with. But this first one is the one that I assigned to Pomaikai. Okay, let's move on. I want to get through as many of you folks as possible. Let's jump to Wailana, since you've been so quiet all evening. Um, which of the two melee would you like to do, or to at least start with?
Um, can I do Kapaniolo Nui Kualapu?
Sure.
I think it's on page 19.
Page what? 90 or 19?
19.
And I can't see the page numbers here. Where am I?
You're on 37.
Yeah, I'm not seeing a page number on this. I'm going to switch to a different program for this one that I know a little better. Sorry, guys, hang on. I don't like Acrobat for this. Here we go. Come on. Sharing. Oh, that's not the one I want. Unfun it. This is the one. Here we go. 1519. Oh, that's much easier. Okay.
Okay. So, Kapaniolo Nui o Kuala Pu'u was composed by Julie Alcale, and it honors George P. Cook, who was the manager of Molokai Ranch. Molokai Ranch was formed in 1897 when a group of Honolulu businessmen bought 70,000 acres from the Bishop Estate and leased 30,000 acres from the Hawaiian government. 10 years later, the land was bought by Charles M. Cook under his son, George P. Cook. They raised cattle and produced sweet potato, wheat, and honey, and was the second largest cattle ranch in Hawaii. The Cook family owned Molokai Ranch for 80 years until the late 1980s. And yeah, that's what this song is about. It's about George P. Cook. I listened to two versions of this song by the Kahawanu Lake Trio and Kel Ho. And both of them didn't sing the second, or not the second verse, but the fourth verse. Akahi ho'iho a ikemako. They didn't sing that verse. And then also what I noticed too is that the title says Kapaniolo Nui, but then in the words, like on the bottom, it says Ke Paniolo Nui.
Yeah, I think that's just a typo.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because the one on the bottom, the 20-page uses Kapaniolo too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I remember us catching that last semester. This is one of the mele that my previous class had recorded as part of a medley of Molokai mele that I still need to get out, guys. It will get out this year, I promise. Just things have been crazy. Okay, so looking at this, a great job on the background. So point out some of the visual elements.
Okay, so in the second verse, it says the sound of the whistle rings sweetly across the plain, and that whistle signifies the whistle that George Cook had, and he would, like, I guess he'd use it. It was like a signal whistle that he had.
Sweet.
Yeah, and then throughout the song, the great cowboy Molokai is George P. Cook.
Right.
And then Lani Kaula is the famous Kukui Grove on the east end of Molokai.
Awesome. So yeah, really only two major ones there. The sound of verse 2, the kahi ho'ia ike maka. One thing I want to point out with that fourth line, and I didn't realize this for a long time, that I used to use a kahinoa or whatever to say that I just did something. A kahinoa wa ha'alali kahale. But in reality, a kahi or a kahi ho'i in that really means it's like for the first time. So for me to say I just left the house, I would say something like wa ha'alali honeo or ha'alale neva, usually iho, and that would give me the same indication it's something that happened previously. Now there's a couple mele that use this. One that I can think of is kuhio be, akahi ho'ia ike ku'umaka. So that's really saying, it's not just saying I just saw it, I just now for the very first time, even if I've seen it 1,000 times before, I have just now truly seen Kuhio Bay and appreciate its beauty. That's the idea there. So yeah, really, and the translation here reflects that. For the first time, I've seen for myself the Ulukukui Grove of Lani Kaula. Um, the other thing I wanted to point out, and it's not one of the elements that we talked about, but that is significant, and we should. So, okekani okapio hone ikekula, ikono mai ana hui kaua. Does a whistle really invite you? So it's
It
kind of,
could.
huh?
It could. Welcome. Like,
Well, I mean, not just it's, that's one element, but does a whistle blow itself? So it's kind of personifying, or
Yeah,
that act of
personification.
personification, or abstracting again. So we could look at the various poetic devices that were mentioned earlier as that. Is it personification or is it something else? Because yeah, it's another example of one is um, and I use this in my dissertations. Ai kalai o waiakea. Where is tranquility? So you're not just directly describing a place. I'm not saying aya iwaya keauka. I'm placing something in its tranquility. So treating this state or condition of the place like it's a place. So that's also a figure of speech. It's referring to things indirectly like that or by their characteristics rather than their actual name of the
So the
place.
whistle almost kind of like is like correlated to almost like the kamakani that would blow in a sense in that area, kind of that kind of like almost how the whistle blows.
No, what Wailana was saying, this is actually a whistle that was it Mr. Purdy?
George P. Cook.
Oh, George Cook. He actually wore it, but they're now treating it like, okay, this is your invitation. They're saying it's poetic, it's poetic license exercised by the composer to make this sound of this whistle, you know, give it a deeper meaning than just being a sound.
Oh, and then, of the times, like most, I don't know, he wasn't like a plantation owner, but that whistle was, in any other place where you're a Luna or a boss man, you're not using that whistle to be like attractive. You're using it to be forceful and demanding.
Yeah,
But
get with it.
that's great.
Or maybe to say Pauhana. So now it's the whistle goes, Pauhana. Now the two of us can get together.
Could be. Yeah, so there's many ways we could interpret it, and that's the beauty of the poetry. We don't we kind of have a picture in our mind because of this background information that's in this melee and that Wailana was able to dig up for us to understand. Okay, we're not talking about the whistling of the wind. This is actually a whistle that he carried, but again, just it's more of a poetic way of putting it. Yeah, it says like work is over, guys, or I need you to come do something. Come follow the whistle. It sounds more friendly than get your butt over here. I got something for you to do. Okay, awesome. I'll stop there with yours, Wailana, and we'll look for other things in yours. I want to make sure we can get to everybody here. Kili Ohu. So your two were Kauai Kapu and Bayview Homie. Which one would you like to? Oh, sorry, Aloha e Molokai and Kauai Kapu. Which would you like to do? Did we lose Kili Ohu?
Yeah, I don't think she's here.
Aisos. Okay. No points for her. No, was it no soup for her? I realized that probably went over.
Excellent reference.
That went over most of your guys' heads, right? Seinfeld show, which I never watched, by the way. Okay.
Oh well, you can't say that. You can't use that reference then. Cool.
Sorry,
The
I never quite got it. Anyway, Joshua, so yours were remember, sure, and be there.
last two. The last two in the pamphlet are the
So
readout.
So which one would you like to do? I'm just gonna ask you
Um,
since we're short on time. Remember or Uanani?
remember, or actually Uanani. I think there's there's a lot more description in it.
Okay, cool. Go for it.
Yeah, so basically it just is very visual, I think, and describes places on Molokai that make Molokai the best of all the islands.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoyed listening to it because I haven't spent a lot of time on Molokai. I just go there once. I visit Molokai once a year for volleyball.
Yeah.
And so this was like a wonderful little tour of Lani Kaula, which was already referenced in a song previously.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then Moa'ula and Haupu. And yeah. I also like the third verse, the Ho'opulu Ikaili o ka malihini. That it's not, it's not visual. It's very sensory, talking about that touch,
Tactile,
soaks the skin. Yeah, tactile.
Yeah. So plenty of those kind of references, and this kind of mele, you write them to sing their praises. So, kahekeo na ailana. I think of ailana as that's really a more modern reference, translation of island maki ailana, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a little unusual, but it's certainly an acceptable. The standard ha'ina iamai, sweet lei kukui, the use of an English word, and
and the line in the ha'ina that is a reference to the first verse, but not a repeat of the first verse.
Yeah,
which
exactly.
is always interesting. That's always notable, and also makes it much harder as a performer. You really got to know what you're doing.
Yeah. So I go back and forth with that. Sometimes I'll simply repeat the first verse with the ha'ina and then borrow the main point to close it with.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, there is no mention of lei kukui. There is the ulu kukui. So maybe he's like, I got to throw a lei kukui or ua kukui reference in there somewhere. So yeah,
right.
I mean, solid use. Yeah, and again, like you said, the reference to Ho'opuluku'ili. So, getting a sense of touch there.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the class real fast if they knew of any other recordings of this that I could listen to, because I was only able to find the original recording that's referenced in the description on Party Hulas.
Genoas. Well,
yeah.
let me remind you guys, and I'm not sure if I did with you all.
Couldn't find it. Yeah, I got lost.
Okay, so do you guys remember I think I pointed out the what do you call it? Never forget the name of it. Ulukau reference.
Yeah, the one that has like all the recordings of a song.
Right. So let me share that with you. Did you look there?
I couldn't find it. I tried. I got lost.
Oh, no soup for you either.
Yeah, no soup for me.
Okay, so in here we have this island music source book. So
wait, how'd you get here though? On Ulukau.
Ulukau/mele/mele.html. I'll send you guys the link in the let me grab that link and I will send it in our chat once. Can I do a chat here? Yeah. So I'm gonna go ua nani molokai bang. Found no references. That was the title, right?
I believe so.
Okay, so it doesn't even have that, which surprises the heck out of me. Doesn't even have the anti-Genoa reference. Okay, we'll have to do some digging on that, Joshua.
Yep. Yeah. All right. Thank
Okay,
you.
awesome job. Let's see here. Preview. Who shall be next? Shay. So your two melee were.
Ho'olihua and Molokai.
Yeah, so which one you want to talk about?
Ho'olihua.
Don't go the easy route.
I don't think I read the
Well, what happened
this
to
this description before.
that? Actually, so
Anyway.
oh, the Kinney one. Is this the Kinney one? Yeah, this
Yeah.
is the Kinney one. So you had not seen this before?
I didn't read this translation before.
Oh, okay.
So I had a dumb blonde moment and
That's hard to believe.
I was looking at this song and I was like, holy wow, what song is that?
You was in a different group, that's why.
Horigi. No, until I read the first couple lines ago. Oh no, I didn't read the lines. I read the bottom of this and it said it's a charming waltz and all of a sudden I was like, Adashi, hello.
Yeah. So what do you see in this guy?
We
got some nice things.
Yeah, I like it because I looked it up on Huapala first and it's nothing compared to this. So
yeah. Well, this is Kimo, so he knows a lot that
yeah,
isn't available in other places. So what were the sensual things? The visual.
It's very descriptive visually. There's feeling in the first verse, of course, with the dampened sea spray. If you have gone out to Hollywood Sea Cliffs, you can feel it along with the wind.
Right.
My home way up high, so pleasant when the wind blows through the coconut trees. I don't. Well, besides the coconut trees on certain people's homestead lands, that's the only ones I can see, or like what I visualize from what I know. It's waltzy, so I'm assuming it's metaphorically a love song, or maybe just their love for their home. Because right here in the hui it says your love is warm. Koaloha pumihana. There's more touch with the tingling and throbbing of the Lani Pili rain. And yeah, visual and touch, I think. It doesn't mention smell, but knowing Ho'olihua, it does have that.
Right. So
kind of like a kalai, but not that the forestry type of smell.
Right.
Greenery. Yeah.
So you notice in here it talks about what I just brought up earlier about kawani kalai, treating tranquility like it's a place where you can put something or that something actually resides. It's a real pretty way of putting it. Yeah, a lot of wind, the sense of feeling, but a lot of one I gotta think about and look up ikanio uai amai.
Which part is that?
In the hui, the third line. It must be talking about, unless you guys think of something else, you know, the fruiting, that it actually has the ioka, you know, the meat of the coconut is, you know, it's got coconuts. In
Oh,
other words, possibly, I'm not sure. But yeah,
same.
there are some visual things going on, but really, yeah, a lot of sensing of the rain, kualani pili, the winds. Um,
This chorus is different from the one that we sang.
Yeah, I was gonna say the words a little bit different.
it's a totally different
Yeah.
song, gang. It's a
Oh,
totally different ho'olehua. That's why
It
it's
is they both been write them together though, but change a couple words.
well, they're using a lot of similar references because the other one is either right before or right after. So here's
Oh, I see.
actually
Yep,
here's
there's
another
a
one.
big
There's
difference.
I think there's three different ho'olehua mele here.
cool.
So yeah, I mean,
But this is
don't
the one we sang, right? The waltzy one.
It's Huila, Konila, Ikoka, you.
oh yeah, I'm sorry. I'm
The
thinking.
Hui part.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
So yeah, so less
The
borrowed.
Mesham.
You're right. Less borrowed parts of this.
no, this is the one, but it's just different. The words
Yeah,
is
the word.
Yeah,
the
the
words is
words is
different,
just
but the other
different.
Ho'olehua is not even like this one.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the other one that the DJ brought us, which is a totally different. Yeah, you're right. I
It's
didn't
like
even.
missing lines.
Yeah, exactly. So
Huila, Konila, something like that, yeah. Po.
Yeah.
and then it went back into
Yeah, I switched.
Haokeo Kuhome La.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Mahalo, Shay. So yeah,
I
you have something?
have a question. Um, or maybe it might be something for Shay to look in or myself on my own. But I noticed that it's sharing the name of the rain, Lani Pili. I don't know, I just had a question in my head, like is that specific to a specific area or just the whole Ho'olehua in general, you know? I don't know. That was my question.
I don't know.
It just says the Lani Pili is a kind of rain that comes very quickly in a downpour that lasts for several days. Does that happen up there?
I'll go
Yeah,
look.
sometimes.
Rain, yeah, right before the clothes is dry.
Right, or right when you just hang the clothes up.
Yeah, or yeah, wash car. So I'll take a look, guys. I think I talked to you before about the book a former colleague of mine did with her mother called Hanau Kaua. It's Lemomi and Kiele Gooch Akana.
I think you.
Company.
Yeah.
That's a really great resource for this kind of stuff. And I know they were working on a similar book with wind names. Don't know how that's coming along. But I'll take a look at it if I can find my copy. She gave me one years ago. I think it's at my house. So I'll go look up and see if it has anything more. Because they went into the newspapers and dug up all this information. There's a lot more than what you're going to find in Olelo no Eo or in the dictionary. Anyway, let's move on so we can get through everybody that remains here. Is Kinohi still here? Did Kinohi bug out on us? No, there you are. Aloha.
Aloha.
Sorry, your screen's real dark too. Are you sitting in a dark room somewhere?
Yeah, the kind. Can I help? No more house. I only get four on the kind.
Oh, you
Four
outside?
walls. Yeah.
Okay. So let me see here. You had Kalama Ula, the noble arrangements, which we were talking about earlier. You want to do that, or you want to do Olu O Pu'ulani?
I was gonna do Kalamula.
Okay, so let me go find that one. No. This one, right?
Uh, Shoot, the one I was looking at wasn't that one.
Oh, it's the one we all know and love. No,
Yeah, that's the one.
that one is Shua Maoli. No, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had asked me the question about the composer because it said um, arrangement. Wait, actually, is it this one? This one says the arrangement by Robert Kamonu. This is, yeah, this is the noble one. Um, can you guys help me out? Didn't we have somebody in class in the last 2 years cycle that talked about this? I'm pretty sure there's a solid claim to authorship in this. Was it one of the Helm family? Does anyone recall from that group? Kele or Kiaka Po'o?
Elike.
What is the question? If this version of Kalama Ula was written by a helm?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll have to look into it, Kinohi. I thought that someone had made a pretty strong claim to being the author of this. I thought I was a member of the Helm family, but I could be mistaken. I'll do a little more research and talk to Kimo and see if he knows any more because these documents, this is from like 40 years ago. So I'm sure there's more known about them now. Sorry, somebody had something?
Yeah, because I have my version of Kamanu's arrangement for Kalama Ula,
Yeah.
and from what I found was a Dudua and Makala.
Oh, a
Yeah,
Duda.
yeah, I saw that.
Okay, yeah, and I could be mistaken about it being
It was a
Helm.
very George Helmy song, so it could have been
Well,
just kind of.
He sang it all the time.
yeah.
Just
It's associated with
love
him.
it. Yeah, there you go. There you
It's
go.
from Kalamaula.
That could be why I'm drawing the connection. It could be a dude. Well, let's look into it. I
It
mean,
is
it'd
a
be
Dudua.
curious to.
Yeah.
Right here again.
Yeah. Anyway, so Kinohi, can you go through this, walk us through it, and point out some of the sensual aspect?
Sure, I think it was the other one.
Oh, did I? Sorry, I have this habit of playing with
Yeah,
these
right there.
things when you guys are talking. So, okay. So any not just the visual, but the touch, smell, taste, feel.
So I chose this song because actually I was born and raised in Kalamaula. And from my research, I saw that Emma Kala Durua was a songwriter,
Awesome.
and she wrote this song in 1922. And Emma Bush was the one that sung the song and recorded it in 1928. And it was talking about the genuine attractiveness and splendor of Kalamu'ula,
Mm-hmm.
and where the songwriter at the time was in the bower, they arrived and behold the beauty and splendor of Kalamu'ula. She also wrote that this land is famous, a famous homestead land of Kalamu'ula, and she also wrote about her wanting to return and
Right.
reside in the splendor of Kalamu'ula. And the last verse, I never really get what she was saying, or he. Um, it says, "Tell the refrain, let us return to the splendor of Kalamu'ula."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there really isn't, a lot of sensory information. The second line, Mekio no na awe. So, sense of fragrance there. Uh, Hui mai ho'i ko. Um, just to talk a little bit about that's kind of an idiomatic phrase. Usually you see that with nanea, hinanea mai ho'i ko. And you really can't if you go to the dictionary under ko and look for a word that would fit in there, there really isn't one, which is why I think it's more of an idiomatic phrase. Idioms are like things that we just say that you really can't literally translate. You know, that they have.
Tra la 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 la.
Not so much.
Really?
No, I mean that's like, you know, what we would call what's the word? Meaningless vocables, something like that. But yeah, they're phrases that I'll have to dig some up, but in English, where it doesn't make sense if you try to look at it grammatically or break down the words, but you understand what it means.
It's raining cats and dogs.
No, that's a different kind of figure of speech. Let me go look that up, and we can talk
I was
about
just
it
going
another.
off of your idiom
I
thing.
got it. I got it, Kumo. It says a group of words established by usage as having a meaning not deducible from those of the individual words or
Yeah,
a characteristic mode of expression, music or art.
yeah. So does it give any good examples in English?
I'll have to go deeper into it, and my connection is not the best.
That's okay. Let's move on, guys. If we hang up on this, we'll be here another 20 minutes, and I won't get to hear from everybody. But yeah, if
It's
anybody,
like green cats and dogs.
it says raining cats, and I don't know. To me,
Yeah.
that's not an idiom.
Cool.
Yeah,
Wow. Now you cracking me up. Okay, that's cool. That's cool.
yeah. No, no. I mean, seriously, it's
I mean, like on Hawaiian idiom.
yeah.
Like,
Well, there are
oh,
others. There are others in Hawaiian
yeah.
where
It
yeah,
says, it also says see the light.
yeah, guys, let's move on from idioms. I'll find a good example, and there are plenty in Hawaiian. There's plenty in, that I've been learning in Te Reo Maori too, where you just can't go to the dictionary. They call them kiwaha, where you just have to accept them for what they are. Um, but so heu I mai ho'iko, hinanea mai ho'iko, that's an example of it where you'll hurt your brain if you dig and try to explain what ko means in those circumstances. La 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 la. Kiaka, since you piped in there with your mana'o on idioms, hinani kukila kila or moa ula? E koho.
Kaliki. What was the first one? Ekalamai. I didn't write the titles. I looked into it, but I didn't write the titles down.
Oh, girl. Hey, nani ku kila kila or moa
And
ula.
that one. Henani kukila kila. So I listened to like a bunch of different recordings of this song, and I noticed that there's so many like different lyrics, like they didn't sing it exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
And like they tend to like switch certain lines around. I don't know if that was a mistake or maybe that's how they learned it, but that kind of caught my attention. And then when I was researching about the song, like I just kind of related it to our reading of that we just read about on what Mary was saying, that like it has a clear picture. So like it's a clear and clear meaning about halava. So and then she mentions like no need to dig deeper because it clearly is explaining what you see, how halava is, But since he's talking about the sensory things, I guess I can look at it now. Looks like more descriptive than any sensory. Yeah. I don't know. I just kind of hung up on that detail that she wrote about no need to dig deep because it's clearly saying exactly what the song is about. I don't know.
Well, that's different. Looking at the details of we're talking about the details of the literal expression here. We're not digging into kauna, we're not digging into metaphor, we're simply trying to identify those elements that, entice the human senses. So to me, it's,
More
waihune,
visual.
wailele hune no, waihune no,
Lelehune na pali.
wailele hune na pali, that's visual. The
Mhm.
waters from the waterfalls. Ko kahiko no ia, it is your adornment. So it's talking about the cliffs and how they're adorned by, the misty spray. Alulua Inapali, the cliffs facing one another. So those are all, kind of visual
Yeah, it's more like a
aspects.
visual, yeah, song than any other
Yeah,
sensory. That's what I've, yeah.
yeah.
And
Iawai
then yeah, go ahead.
Ha'ihi Napali Pulupei Kahunawai. So yeah, there's also in that Pulupei no Hunawai, the sense of touch of the water
Mm.
landing on the and moistening there. So yeah, it's there's large sections where it seems very, no kaheki the kaheki no aina moloka I o halava ka aina no ia I ka'u ike aina ho'ohihi ana malihini ho'ohano vale no I ka waha. They love to say it. Hum vale mai. So there's a list of kind of, emotion things, and those are the ones that are hard, when you have somebody trying to dance. Just the
Mm.
expression of those things can be a little bit more difficult. I think this one could be, it's not, the hu vale, you know, in this case, it's talking about the overflowing of emotion, but somebody choreographing it could use a visual representation of, say, a gushing water. So, yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
I
just,
noticed that. Oh, Kalamai.
no, go ahead.
No, I just noticed they started with Hui all the time in the beginning on almost all the recordings, and then they would go into the
Mhm.
first verse. Yeah.
Yeah, they're. I wouldn't say that those kind of melee are super uncommon, but they're not as common as those that go verse. Uh, Dennis is,
Moloka Inuya Hina.
yeah. Mo,
Mm.
no, I mean usually. Well, I've heard performances where that's all they've done is the hui, but there is actually the first verse. Dennis's um, Wahine Ilikea, you almost always start that with the hui. Koke'e, the same. So he's got a couple that work like that. And to me, it's difficult to come up with making it work like that. But yeah, once you hear it like that, it's hard to hear it otherwise. To try to put a verse in front of it. So awesome. Let's move on because it's 8:18 right now. I'd like to get you guys. We're already past the time I promised to get you guys out of here. Who's left? Rosa. Let's do Rosa first, and then you, Isaiah, and then Lehiva too. She's sitting there
Oh,
going, "They're gonna forget about me."
let's do the Hiva.
No, you go ahead, Rosa. So I know Molokai or Kolana.
No.
Which one?
Uh, Kalana, Kalana Molokai. No, where's all my notes? I've got so many notes, so many lots of notes.
Is it this one here, the Alice Johnson one? Yeah. Okay, Kolana.
Oh yeah, maybe it's the other one I liked better.
Well, let's do this one for just for quickly going through it. So
Yeah,
much.
there's nothing much here that's visual at all.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
there's a coconut grove, and there's
References to the Coconut Grove.
and
That's
a
really
kukui
really
grove.
kind of
Yeah,
it. So let's jump up
yeah.
quickly to Aino o Molokai. Where are you? Here we go.
Yeah. So this one is more sensory, like covered with misty rain. E
Mhm.
hua ana I ka Illinois.
Yeah.
And magnificent is that it's a waterfall. Haka no. Haka amo. Is that a waterfall or it's someplace? The note that I've got for myself has got no sandbar and there's big cliffs.
Any of you folks familiar with it? Haka'ano? Where is it?
Is it on north side, Paul?
I know it's not a waterfall, but
Yeah.
Isn't like
yeah, it's
Right
down
after
Halava,
Halava, guys.
down
Right
Halava.
after Halava. Right after the next day.
Okay, well, it doesn't say waterfall, Kikani o ka Ilikai, so it must be seaside somewhere, so it's talking about, the sound of the waves smacking against
Yeah,
the sea
that's the sound one. Yeah.
He pu'eone ole, so there's no beach or sandbar.
Mhm.
Paliki loa, so we got some visual references in there.
And we've also got lipoa, that's seaweed, yeah, that's
Yeah.
fragrant.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are the visual ones that I've got.
Yeah. Me ke alo ka lipoa e moanine. Yeah. Good.
And
I-
the interesting, yeah,
Go ahead.
the recording that I came across was actually the composer singing.
Oh,
So,
really?
yeah, it's real nice and simple. Yeah.
Okay, Davis. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how, so many of the mele of that era, we've already encountered a couple with the idea of, ho'okipa malihini, that's, kind of places it for me. We're talking 30s, 40s, 50s when, there's that, the commercialization of the music and the culture for enticing tourists. Do we hear that very often these days? Not with COVID. Stay away, you people. Isaiah, go ahead. And yours is.
I had Kalama Ula as well, but the Khmer collection and then Pa Kakai.
So which one would you like?
I'll do Pa Kakai. Pa Kakai. This was, I mean, I didn't find any recordings on it, but the way I kind of looked at it was like, as a sailor, I mean, the beat that I kind of found was like, my sailor's life for me, la 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 la, kind of like that. So, I mean, the way I look at it is, I mean, it's like really has a lot of sensory and visualization in it that I mean, it's this person's stoke of seeing, I mean, just this place of Molokai and like just how, I mean, in the words, like it says, this is wonderful to see, glad some sight to see. I mean, I just like little images that really stuck out but popped, you know what I mean, to this person that like really made them retain this feeling of passing by or having a holiday on Molokai. That I mean, so I mean, like I said, it was, I didn't find a recording, but the way I looked at it was just like this person was just super stoked to have come pass on the south side of Molokai, and whatever it was. And I mean, also where it says let's be quick, oh boys of the sea spray. The way I looked at it was when I was going to Lahaina Luna and I had to go back from the wharf all the way to Lahaina and then hitting the spray, I mean, at one after another. So I mean, although it was like I mean, it was a rough kind of a vibe out in the ocean or whatnot, but just still yet of knowing your pleasant destination or what you're going to be going to, I mean, is what I kind of caught on to the song. Was just like this person, I mean, I don't know if he really had stepped, I mean, I guess he had stepped on Molokai, but from, I guess, being out at sea, I mean, just how much, I mean, if, I mean, how the fragrance of the sweet, of the sweet Maile was able to maybe, traverse from the Uka down to the Kai, I mean, we just, I mean, I don't know if that's really true, but just how much, I mean, with Paka Kai also being a local wind, with that wind coming down, with, to the area, and carrying the sweet Maile, or whether he did go out into the Uka or wherever it was to really smell the sweet Maile. But I just feel like, I mean, how it says, I mean, Pakakai is at Waialua. I didn't even know that, so I mean, just really in that area itself, I mean, how, sacred it is and how much, I mean, goes on in there. I mean, it's really, to me, I mean, it was just like, I was just like, I'd put myself like, if I was a sailor, I was like, yeah, Molokai, 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 you know what I mean, kind of a thing. So I mean, in a sense of just how, I mean, yeah, I mean, just things are like, I mean, are just like, kind of pinpointed, but then the way I looked at it was like, ah ha 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 ha, I ha, ha. I mean, kind of like that. So I mean, and that's the vibe I kind of picked up on it. So I mean, yeah.
Okay, so something I want to point out, I mean, you did a great job on the sensory aspects of it. So, in talking about what we touched on earlier, when Kelly and I were talking about the connectedness, the pili, is to look at that second verse from Lupa Lupa and the next four lines down. Uh, Lupa Lupa I ke ala o kamaili lao na na mehe mehe ala e I maiana e naoyaku I pa kai kai. To me, that's a complete thought. Now, I think there's a typo in this. It may not be, but mekeala e I maiana. I think that's supposed to be meheala.
Yeah, so because mine's on is different from down. I got down, mine's on says lupa lupa ike ala o kamaile lau ona ona lupa lupa ike ala me ka ala I maiana.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, K, I think is wrong, because this is kind of an idiomatic expression. Mehe ala e whatever. Allah there is not Allah as in fragrance. It's not Allah as in road. It's like saying, and this is fairly common in Mele. Mehe mea e mehe ala e imayana, as if saying to me. Now, if you went and looked at each of those individual words, you'd go, "What the heck does this mean?" But it's when you're taking something, you're seeing something, and interpreting it in a way that this is what this is communicating. So lupa lupa ike ala o kamaile la ona ona. This, and I don't like luxuriant. Lupa lupa is like a lushness that you use for foliage. Kind of rich and.
I mean, I guess, yeah, back in the days too, I mean, everything was more lush,
Yeah.
in a sense too.
Well,
So
but so it's talking about the lushness of the fragrance of the maile, the lao maile lao naona, as if it is telling me to go to Pakaikai. So it's like you're interpreting that fragrance and making that connection for you, saying you need to go there.
yeah, I guess, yes. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
when you say that, yeah, I mean, with the stoke that he was feeling, like he's more inviting to more of his sailor friends to come, or whatnot, or just people to come visit. I mean, yeah, I mean, that totally makes sense. Yes, thank
Yeah.
you.
So, and you can do that with, with other kind of references. You see a sign, or, you have an experience, and as if somebody is telling you you should be doing that. Mehiala e imayana e nanea pukaua. That, we should, stay here and enjoy our time together. If you do a search of Huapala and look for, Meheala e, and it's Okina I, say, and that's saying. The other one I thought of is something like, what was it? Aya oi. Now, if you go to the Hawaiian dictionary and look up those words, or a grammar book, and it says aya ya oi, what's it mean?
You.
Aya ya oi. It's with you.
Oh,
So I would go, what's with me? But in this context, aya ya oi. Should we go Zippy's or McDonald's? Aya oi. It's for you to choose. So you have to understand aya ya oi means it's your choice. That's a good example.
Yeah, so I mean, it's his choice to either go see, the lushness of the Maile, or just be near the shore, kind of a thing. Is that? I mean, I don't know.
No, it's specifically saying to go to Pakaikai.
Yeah.
The fragrance is enticing you.
Okay.
In a nonverbal way to go to Pakaikai. That's it. It's
No.
not a choice of do this or do. I'm saying, I'm pointing out the fact that we talked earlier about idioms, and I'm giving you an example of an idiom.
The idiot part is coming out. Sorry.
No, it's your choice.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm sticking with the idiom, not the idiot.
Yeah. You're not an idiot.
Oh, my head was like,
Isaiah, come to every class now. No miss any classes.
yes, I
No
will.
miss any classes, okay?
Yeah, so I should have been clear on the distinction. I'm not talking about the Malay. I'm jumping back. I'm doing the squirrel thing and pointing back to our previous conversation about idioms. Okay, last but not the least, Eva, you're hiding. I see you.
I'll do Nani Molokai.
Okay. Last one, and we're out of here. Okay.
So I guess a lot of the titles also have he, because on the song I listened to by the Molokai Trios, it's He Nani Molokai.
Yeah.
And they sing He Nani Molokai Nuya Hina, but on here it's Ku Aina. So I haven't found one with Ku Aina yet. And mostly this song really just highlights different parts of Molokai and their significance. So Lani Kaula, which is the Kukui Grove of Puhoku Ranch, which is more closer to Halava, and then all the way down Halava, the waterfall, and then Kalamu'ula, which is the coconut grove planted by Kamehameha V, and then Ho'olehua, the pineapple fields, and then Kalopapa, where the Hansen, where the colony was for the patients with Hansen's disease.
Yeah, it's interesting, the pineapple field reference, because all it says is Kaulu o Kahala.
Yeah, I saw that, and I remember reading in our past paper of how you should be careful with you. Well, I know, like, I've heard people say you should be careful with using that word.
Yeah.
Because of the other meanings. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I am, and my friend Kenneth isn't, because he's from Puna, and that's really the plant that Puna people identify with. One of the nicknames of the area is Puna Paya Ala Ikahala. So fragrant walls of Puna because of the hala tree. Yeah, so to kind of summarize, there's not a huge amount of it in here. And in a lot of the mele, we're seeing the same references. Aina kaulana, aina ho'upulapula, ulu kukui, lani kaula, ho'okipa malihini. So there's a lot of, reuse of these references. And one thing I really wanted to emphasize with you guys is, in Hawaiian composition, that's not a bad thing. If you were in Nashville and you couldn't come up with something totally original, you'd never get a job. They're always looking for new ways to come up with something, and some of them are corny. Any of you guys ever heard this country song? It's called If I Tell You You Had a Great Body, Would You Hold It Against Me? Kind of see the double entendre there. Would you hold it against me as like, would you be mad at me, or would you come over here and hold that, weird, quirky, kind of funny, awkward stuff like that. There used to be a time when that kind of stuff was all the rage. It's not so now, but still, they don't want to see lyrics that they've seen in other mele, and in Hawaiian, it's okay. And some of these mele are really, they're borrowing heavily from stuff that has been said before. There's a point for me where I kind of get bored with it, but at the same time I have an appreciation for it. I think you can borrow some, and even for my mele, Henani Molokai, I did use the what do you call, the Ulukukui o Lani Kaula reference, but I used it for a particular reason and a purpose, and not just, I run out of ideas. So, you can reuse these for emphasis. You could take any line in a song like this and make that a new mele out of that line. If you look in here, I know Opula Pula. You could write a song by that. Wailelea Omoa Ula. Hinani Halava. Hinani Kalau Papa. Hey Vai Vai Nui. All of those, almost in every line you could find something that you could take and create your own mele with. and use some of these references. But I think the thing is you really need, and Kili, when I talked to him about this, when I did the melee that they used at song contest, no, it wasn't that reference, that conversation. Um, he uses the term poetic olos, basically, that you're putting yourself out there a little bit and not simply recycling ideas that have been heard 1,000 times already. So, yeah, if you want to reuse some of these lines in your own melee, that's fine, but do you have something unique to offer, you know? Or if you're using an older reference, is there a particular, if you want to invoke Koulu Kukui o Lani Kaula, why? Is that a place that's significant in your ohana? Do you know the story behind that? Are you referencing the story of the origins of that place for some reason? So yeah, I mean, you could take a melee, and I'll do this comment. It's like if I write a first verse, I'll go ahead and I'll jump down and write the hui fairly quickly, with similar reference, and then just changing that first line to ha'ina or, ea ka'umele, puanaia, whatever, and then figure out how to fill in the middle with the details of what I want to say. So with that, gang, it's 8:36. I'll give you guys 5 minutes. If anybody has any questions, I'll try to answer them quickly. If you have none, I will simply bid you ahui ho. Nobody wants to answer a question for fear of everybody else getting pissed at them, right? One question.
I want to stay on with you after everybody leaves.
Okay, Hiki. But anybody have? Yeah, so how about if I do this? For those of you that want to go, feel free. If any of you want to hang out for another 5-10 minutes, I'll hang in here and do it. So if you choose to leave, I will not hold it against you.
Ahui ho, love you guys all.
Ahui ho, ako no.
Ahoy ho.
And I you're not
The idioms and not the idiot.
You're not an idiot. I don't ever want to hear that again.
Okay, folks, have a good evening. Aloha, love you all.
Ahui ho. So did you have something specific you wanted to ask, Kelly, or?
So my two songs were really, really good. One of them was same with.
Oh my God!
No, it's all good. Just to hear. No, but I have a question. Do you know who the Lei Kukui Serenaders are?
Yeah.
Who they were?
Yeah.
Okay, so Kawai Cockett was one that sang that song, but I don't know who the persons were of Lei Kukui Serenaders.
I'm so sorry.
No, don't be. It's all good. It was almost all the same thing, so don't even worry.
Well, so which was this melee?
The Molokai Waltz. But that's
Halabo.
pretty much the only question I had. Everything else was touched because it's the same song as Aka's. And then the Lea Halaba song was, I found out, like, just the Molokai trio. There's just so much connection, and that was it. But no big deal. No big deal.
Let me take a look at this one again.
I just wanted to know who are the persons in Lei Kukui Serenaders.
I will have to go look it up. Honestly, I might.
I should have texted you, shucks,
I'm so
or emailed.
I feel bad.
Don't be.
Yeah.
It was a good night. Everybody, it was good.
I usually forget somebody. I'll go ask if I can't find out. I'll ask Kimo. So I remember I went to Honolulu once and went to some. Sorry, it was a gay bar, but I am straight with Puakea Nogomeyer because that's where he hung out, and
nobody
on the bill that night. So it was Napalapalai before. I think it was like the time of their first album. They were just getting started, and Kauai was also one that was there, but I think it was might have been about that time when we were in Hilo, we were doing a fundraising concert for the 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 Kayapuni program over. This was like '95 or so, and I reached out and invited him over. I think I met him that night. I'm not for sure, but anyway, so he came over and I went up and introduced myself, and he gives me a hug and he says, in Hawaiian, "Thank you so much for inviting me. You know, this is the first time that I've ever been asked to perform at a fundraiser for one of the immersion schools."
Wow.
And he was such a strong advocate for the Olelo that, I was just, my heart was breaking, but I was happy that, that we did reach out for him. And he went up there and sung that. I forget the group that was there before him, but they went up and sang. He went up to sing, and I guess the sound guy didn't make any adjustments. I thought he was going to blow out the speakers. His voice was just so powerful. It was beyond anybody I have ever heard, before or since then. Incredible. But I'll research that for you. If I don't have the album, which I think I might, I'll reach out to Kimo and ask him who else performed on it.
Yeah, who was Kawai Kakit and Lake Kukui Serenaders? But I live on Lake Kukui Road, so then it was like really, I just read into it.
Did you do a search on it?
I did, but I don't I could find who was Molokai Trio, Auntie Anna, Turua, and Uncle Abraham. That was pretty easy on Molokai, and Eliza Paleka. But I could not find who was Lake Kukui Serenaders.
Let me take a quick.
I tried to look for pictures,
Well, there should be a. Let me see here. There's no images with the CD cover. Yeah, there's if you go into Google Images, you'll see a picture of the CD cover.
Right.
So let me take a look here. Oh, it has on the back. It has some. One of these links has a. Let me download the image.
Ooh.
It has the back cover digitized. Problem is it going to
be? Oh yeah.
Yeah, the problem is the image is not, the resolution is not great.
Where's the albums when we need them?
It's all blurry. Charles M. It begins with an M. I can't make it out. So it is on the back cover of the album. If you happen to know anybody that has it.
Is that the Beautiful Kauai album? What is the name of the album?
Yeah. So on eBay, somebody had posted a picture of the front and the back cover. It looks like Charles Morrison and Robert. Begins with a P and ends with Luhi.
Like Paluhi?
Something like that. It looks like two letters though, like PIA, Pialuhi. That doesn't make sense.
What was it? Well, Robert. I bet if we just Google that too. So let me do Charles.
It looks like Morrison. Let me see if there's another image. I think that's the same image.
Oh, it's Bobby Pa'aluhi.
Oh, okay.
Robert Pa'aluhi, a musician with I'm looking at the obituaries basically.
Oh, okay.
A musician for Kawai Cockett and the Le Kukui Serenaders. Retired Royal Contracting truck driver. So if I just put up Robert Pa'aluhi. Robert Pa'aluhi. Or Bobby, he was known as.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure it's Morrison. It looks like there may only be one S.
Let's see.
Yeah, I can't seem to find any kind of web page. Oh, you know what? I think I have Kawaii's son on Facebook. He rarely posts. Ha'aheo.
However, I mean that we got one name.
Yeah.
Surfside Hawaii. Oh, Charles Martin.
Oh, Martin.
Morton.
Morton.
Charles Morton.
How'd you find that?
I put up Robert's name.
Oh, cool.
Morton. So he was the guitar. Robert Pa'aluhi was the bass. Oh, there's one more person. Is that not B? Kawai Cockett, guitar. There's one more. Oh wait, Kawai Cockett is always another.
I found the Pa'alohio bit too.
Oh man, that's a nice picture though, with their green nice pants. Kawai Cockett.
Screams 70s, doesn't it?
Right? But it doesn't say their name. League Serenaders.
Here we go. I think I found something.
One more name.
Melvin Mahuiki.
Ooh. What did he play?
Vocals, Kawaii's vocals, ukulele, Melvin guitar, Robert bass, and Charles. Here, I'll send you the link. It's a website that also has things in Japanese. I'll email you the link.
Charles Martin guitar, Robert Pa'aluhi bass, and Melvin. Okay. Wow. Nice.
Okay, just emailed the link to you. Yeah, Melvin Mahuiki.
Oh. Thank you. But everything else, that was kind of nice listening to everybody.
Yeah.
And then no, Le Halava, I have a recording. Sorry, Vailana. You can I have a recording. I don't have the recording, but I got to listen to a recording of Po'o's mom singing it. It's so beautiful. I don't have the recording, but Camille Napoleon is her name. And they recorded it as part of somebody went around and asked people from different islands to sing a specific song about their island. And then that one was selected for her. And it's so pretty.
Cool.
Fast.
Yeah. No, I mean I'm looking at it now, the lay. So
yes, that's what I was going to mention, the emphasis on adornment.
Well, yeah, but all these elements, so the ua, ke'ala, the makani, the ehukai, pakolonahi, Akahau, Ikapola'i, um, Kamakani, Kekukui, Kaliko, Maile.
And he
Yeah.
mentioned so many places.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know half of them. So
We're gonna
like
we're
I
gonna
go to
talk
Halava often, but I don't know these actual, ridges.
places. Yeah, so I mean that's something you can, if you want to do some research on, please do, because we will get into names, place names, wind names, rain names. That'll be the discussion for a particular week. I'm not sure exactly when. So if you want to try to do some research, figure out where these places are, if you can identify them, about where they are in the valley, you know, and then
Yes.
you can talk about that and remind me when we get to that point, because chances are I'm gonna forget.
No, and this song is to the tune of Hawaii Aloha.
Yeah, I heard that. I mean, I haven't heard the melee perform, but I heard that's it borrowed the
It's
melody of
beautiful.
that. Awesome.
Thank you for
Okay, well,
staying after.
no worries. Happy to help. Have a great rest
Wailana
of your
might
week.
have a question.
Oh, you have one, Waylana?
Yeah, just a quick question. About my second mele was Naopio Molokai.
Yeah, no, Opio. What about it?
So I was trying to research like information about this, and nothing really came up except for it was dedicated to the graduating class of 1976.
Oh,
So I was wondering like if there's melees that's dedicated to specific people or like classes for this instant, how do we find information about it or even like recordings of that melee?
Well, first I would ask family members if they happen to know anybody.
Yeah, that's what I did too. I tried to
Yeah,
ask around if there
So
were
because
Wailana,
1976.
this is my dad and Auntie Cammie's class.
Really?
Yeah, na opio o molokai.
Oh, you know it. Okay.
Keiki o ka'aina. So they gave it to one of our classes to sing too. You might want to ask your mom. We
I
might
did
have,
ask my mom.
okay, because Bogey, so there's Auntie Cammie Napoleon. Try get a hold of Po'o's mom. This is who this song was written for. And did Auntie Vanda Hanakahi write it?
Ivy Hanakahi. Woo.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just
So
ask
this,
Auntie
And it
Cammie.
was bugging me because every single time I was trying to look up or was asking all around all of my aunties and uncles.
So
And
much fun to sing. Like I'm getting chicken skin. I cannot believe I stayed after just to give that insight to you.
well, that's the beauty of it. I mean, you guys are uncovering stuff, like finding the guys that played with Kawai and making these kind of connections. That's what's great about having all of you over there do this research, because we can start answering some questions, and in the case of this melee, perpetuate it for another generation. I'd be surprised if
I
Polo didn't know the melee and the story
she
behind it.
she does a little, but she'll probably be modest about it. She'll tell you ask her mom because that's just how she is. But in my compilation of wanting to teach 10 songs to 7th grade regular ed who doesn't have Hawaiian
Yeah.
language background, this is one at the top.
Mm-hmm.
And you
yeah,
reminded me of it. That's cool.
it seems like a fun song to sing. Like there's a lot of like calling out and responding kind.
Yeah.
That's what I noticed about that.
But this is kind of in the tradition of mele that are written for particular groups, like Hawaiian civic clubs. A lot of them have their own mele, and a lot of them are done. What's to the mele? Well, Hailama Farden pointed it out to me. There was one for the Lahaina Side Civic Club. Um, it might have been Hawaii Aloha as well. That they did this. They used the same melody for that. The one that I just did for Kenneth's, graduating class for their whatever anniversary they have coming up, probably their 55th or something. Um, but yeah, doing things for groups like that. Mele for politicians. John Almeida did one for, I forget which one of the Kings, Johnny King or something, a campaign song. That'd be a great topic for somebody, because you really, there was that one, Elmer had this weird campaign song, vote for Elmer for mayor, you know. But you know, in the old days, they took it seriously in full-blown compositions for them. So, yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, Kelly,
And the parentheses are echoes.
yeah. So I don't
Yeah,
believe
that's what it seemed like. That's what I thought it was.
I don't believe in coincidences. You two were meant to be the last two here to make this connection.
Yeah, that's yeah. Okay.
Glad that we had this
Thank
platform
you.
to accomplish that.
Thank you for the reminder.
Good
Bye,
night,
Kumu.
guys.
Mahalo.
Ahui
Bye.
ho.
Good night.
Aloha.